Hello everyone, this video is brought to you by Newton's Group of Institutions. My name is Arvind from Department of CSE. In this video, I'll be talking about class diagrams and object diagrams. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon for the latest updates. In our previous video, we have discussed about the history of UML, why do we model, what is conceptual modeling, architecture, classes, relationships, and common mechanisms in UML. Now, let us discuss about the class diagrams and object diagrams. Coming to class diagrams are the most common diagrams found in modeling object-oriented systems. A class diagram shows a set of classes, interfaces, collaborations, and their relationships. So we use class diagrams to model the static design view of the system. For the most part, this involves modeling the vocabulary of the system, modeling collaborations, or modeling schemas. Here, class diagrams are also the foundation of a couple of related diagrams, that is component diagrams and deployment diagrams. So here, coming to the terms and concepts, a class diagram is a diagram that shows set of classes, interfaces, and collaborations and their relationships. So graphically, a class diagram is a collection of vertices and arcs. And some of the common properties is a class diagram is just a special kind of diagram which shares the same common properties and do all other diagrams. The name and the graphical content that are a projection into a model, which distinguishes a class diagram from other kinds of diagrams in its own particular content. Here, the content we talk about the class diagrams commonly contain the following things: classes, interfaces, collaborations, dependency, generalization, and association relationships. So, it links all the other diagrams. Class diagrams may contain nodes and constraints. So here, class diagrams may also contain packages or subsystems, both of which are used to group the elements of our model in large chunks. Here, please make a note. The component diagrams and deployment diagrams are similar to the class diagrams, except that instead of containing classes, they contain components and nodes respectively. That is, the class diagram contains classes, component diagrams contain components, and development diagrams contains nodes. So let us see some of the common uses of class diagrams. We use class diagrams to model the static design view of the system. This view primarily supports the functional requirements of a system, the services the system should provide to its end users. When we model the static design view of a system, we typically use class diagrams in one of the three ways. The first one is to model the vocabulary of a system. So modeling the vocabulary of the system involves making a decision about which attributes are part of the system under consideration and which falls outside its boundaries. We use class diagrams to specify these abstractions and their responsibilities. And the second one is to model the simple collaborations. As we know that a collaboration is a society of classes, interfaces, and other elements that work together to provide some comparative behavior which is bigger than the sum of all the elements. For example, when we are modeling the semantics of a transaction in a distributed systems, we cannot just stare at a single class to understand what is going on. So rather, these semantics are carried out by a set of classes which work together. So we use class diagrams to visualize and specify this set of classes and their responsibilities. And the third one is to model a logical database schema. Here, think of a schema as a blueprint for the conceptual design of the database. So in many domains, what we want to store persistent information in a relational database or in an object-oriented database. So we can model schemas for these database using class diagrams. Now let us see the common modeling techniques. Coming to modeling comments, the most common purpose for which we use notes is to write down free from observations, reviews, or explanations. So by putting these comments directly in our model can become a common repository for all the dispensary artifacts. So we can even use notes to visualize the requirements and show how they tie exactly to the parts of our model. To model a comment, we put the comments as a text in a note and place it adjacent to the elements to which it refers. So here we can show a more explicit relationship by connecting a node to its elements using a dependency relationship. Then we need to remember that we can hide or make visible the elements of our model as we see fit. This means that we don't have to make our comments visible everywhere to which it is attached to or visible. And if our comment is lengthy or it involves something richer than the plain text, we need to consider putting our comments in an external document and then linking or embedding that document in a note attached to our model. As our model evolves, keep those components that record significant decisions that cannot be inferred from the model itself, and unless they are of historic interest, we need to discard the others. So now let us, for example, consider a model that is a work in progress of a class hierarchy, showing some requirements that shape the model as well as some notes from a design review. Here, most of the comments are simple text, such as note to Mary. But one of them, see here, note at the bottom of this diagram provides an hyperlink to other diagrams. Coming to the modeling new properties, the basic properties of the UML's building block, attributes and operations for classes, the content of packages, and so on are generic enough to address most of the things we want to model. However, if we want to extend the properties of these basic building blocks, we need to define stereotypes and tagged values. So to model the new properties, first we have to make sure there is not already a way to express what we want to model by using the basic UML. If we are convinced that there is no other way to express these semantics, then we need to define a stereotype and add the new properties to the stereotype. So the rules of generalization, the applied tag values defines for one kind of stereotype apply to its children. For example, suppose that we want to tie the model we create to our project configuration management system. Here, we need to keep track of the version number, current check-in or checkout status, and perhaps even the creation of the modification dates of each subsystem, because this is a process specific information and it is not a basic part of the UML, and we can add this information as tagged values. Here it is clearly shows that there are three subsystems. Here three subsystems, each of which has been extended with the versionized stereotype, which is including version and status. Note here the values of the tags such as the version and the status are things that can be set by the tools, not by handwriting techniques. Now, coming to the modeling new semantics. When we create a model using the UML, we work within the rules the UML lays down. So that's a good thing because it means that we can communicate our intent without ambiguity to anyone else who knows how to read the UML. However, if we find ourselves needed to express the new semantics about which the UML is silent, or that we need to modify the UML's rules, then we need to write a constraint. So here, to model the new semantics, first we make sure that there is not already a way to express what we want to use by using this basic UML. If we are convinced that there is no other way to express these semantics, we need to write our new semantics in a constrained place near the element to which it refers. So we can show a more explicit relationship by connecting the constraints to its elements using a dependency relationship. If we need to specify our semantics more precisely and formally, we write our new semantics using OCR. So for suppose in this example, we model a small part of corporate human resource system. Here this figure shows that each person may be a member of 0 or more teams and must have exactly, and here this figure that each person may be a member of 0 or more teams and each team must have at least one person as a member. So it also indicates that each team must have exactly one person as a captain and every person may be a captain of 0 or more teams. Now coming to the object diagram model the instance of things contained in a class diagram. So here an object diagram shows a set of objects and their relationships at a point in time. So we use object diagrams to model the static design view or static process view of the system. So this involves modeling a snapshot of the system at a moment in time and rendering the set of objects, their state and their relationships. So here object diagrams are not only the important for visualizing, specifying and documenting structural models, but also for constructing the static aspects of the system through forward and reverse engineering. Coming to the terms and concepts, here an object diagram is a diagram that shows a set of objects and their relationship at a point in time. Graphically, an object diagram is a collection of vertices and arcs. So here, some of the common properties in object diagram is an object diagram is a special kind of diagram which shares the same common properties as all other diagrams. That is a name and the graphical content that are a projection into a model. So which distinguishes an object diagram from all other kinds of diagrams in its particular content. Here, the content what I am talking about, the object diagrams commonly contain objects and links. So here it links all other diagrams, and object diagrams may contain nodes and constraints. So here sometimes we want to place classes in our object diagram, as well as we want to visualize the classes behind each instance. And another important note is an object diagram correlates with a class diagram. Here the class diagram describes the general situation and the instance diagram describes the specific instance derived from the class diagram. So an object diagram contains primarily objects and classes. Now coming to the common uses of an object diagram. We use object diagrams to model the static design view or static process view of a system, just as we do with the class diagrams. But from the perspective of real or prototypical instances, this view primarily supports the functional requirements of the system, that is, the services the system should provide to its end users. So object diagrams let you model static data structures. So when you model the static design view or static process view of a system, we typically use object diagrams in one way. To model the object structure, modeling object structure involves taking a snapshot of all the objects in a system at a given moment in time. So an object diagram represents one static frame in the dynamic storyboard represented by an interaction diagram. We use object diagrams to visualize, specify, construct, and document the existence of certain instances in our system together with their relationships to one another. Coming to the common modeling techniques, in modeling object structures, when we construct the class diagrams, a component diagram or a deployment diagram, what we are really doing is we are capturing the set of abstractions that are intersecting to us as a group, and in that contrast, exposing their semantics and their relationships to other abstractions in the group. So these diagrams show only potentiality. For suppose if class A has a one-to-one association to the class B, then one of its instance of A, there might be 5 instances of B. On the other hand, if the instance of A, there might be only one instance of B. So at any given moment in time, that instance of A along with the related instances of B with each have a certain value for their attributes and state machines. So here object diagrams are especially used for modeling complex data structures. So when we model our system design view, a set of class diagrams can be used to completely specify the semantics of our abstractions and their relationships. With object diagrams, however, we cannot completely specify the object structure of our system. And for any individual class, there may be a multitude of possible instances, and for a set of classes in a relationship to one another. So there may be many times more possible configurations of these objects. Therefore, when we use object diagrams, we can only meaningfully expose interesting set of concrete or prototypical objects. So to model an object structure, we need to identify the mechanism we would like to model. So a mechanism which represents some functions or behavior of the part of the system we are modeling that results from the interaction of society of classes, interfaces, and other things. Then we need to create a collaboration to describe a mechanism. And for each mechanism, we need to identify the classes, interfaces, and other elements that participate in these collaborations and identify the relationship among these as well. So for example, this figure shows a set of objects drawn from the implementation of an autonomous robot. So here it clearly focuses on some of the objects involved in the mechanism used by a robot to calculate the model of the world in which it moves. Here there are many more objects involved in the running system, but here it mainly focuses on only those abstractions that are directly involved in creating the worldview. So as this figure indicates, there is one object which represents the robot itself, where R is an instance of the robot and R is currently in the state marked moving. So here this object has a link to W, an instance of the world, which represents an abstraction of the robot's world model. And at this moment of time, here W is linked with two instances of area. So here one of them, A2, is shown with its own links to their wall objects and one door object. So each of these walls is marked with its current width, and each is shown linked in its neighboring walls. So here this object diagram suggests the robot has recognized this enclosed area, which has walls on 3 sides and one door on the fourth side. Coming to forward engineering and reverse engineering. So forward engineering in an object diagram is theoretically possible, but practically it is of limited values, as the objects are created and destroyed dynamically at the runtime. So we cannot represent them statically. Whereas to reverse engineering an object model, we choose the target content we want to the reverse engineering. Then we use a tool to stop the execution at a certain moment of time. Then we identify the objects that collaborate with each other and represent in an object diagram. And also we need to understand their semantics and then express these object states. And we also need to identify the links between the objects to understand their semantics. Thank you all.